Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Box Office Talk. This is the show where I break down what happened at the box office, see if my predictions for the top 5 are correct, then make predictions for next week's top 5. So let's get right on into it. Last week I predicted that number 1 would be The Invitation, number 2 would be Dragon Ball Super Superhero, number 3 would be 3,000 Years of Longing, number 4 would be Beast, and number 5 would be Bullet Train. And I only got 1 out of 5 of my predictions right for this weekend. Similar to, I believe, last weekend, I also only got 1 out of 5 correct. This time it was at least the top spot that I guessed correctly. Still, this is pretty embarrassing how much shit has shifted on me with these numbers, so let's go over it. And of course, as always, I record these videos before the official numbers come out. I'm recording this Sunday when the near estimates are there, so all of this could be subject to change, especially with how close they are. But, I don't know, I'm not going to record this Monday. Sorry. Anyways, number 1 was The Invitation. I did get that prediction correct. The budget is fairly low, a $10 million budget, so it makes this $7 million opening a little easier to swallow, I think, especially considering that I think there might be some worldwide appeal. It takes place mostly in the UK somewhere. You know, most of the cast is British. Even Natalie Emmanuel is British, even though she's putting on an American accent. So I think it'll probably do better elsewhere than America right now. But still, you know, $7 million to a $10 million budget isn't awful, but still, for getting the number 1 spot, what a kind of embarrassing way to get there, you know what I mean? There isn't really anything to, like, compare it to as far as, like, how did it do against this movie, or what other franchise was it a part of, or what did this director cast do? It's all kind of like not really that interesting to talk about, so unfortunately I don't really have much else to add other than I think this movie will still have a chance to be profitable, especially as we're going to continue into a slower kind of start for September. You know, I addressed recently that we're in like a drought of August, and it still kind of does carry over into the first couple weeks of September at least, you know what I mean? So I think it will be fine for now. Number 2, bouncing back up here, is Bullet Train, making $5 million, adding to a domestic total of $78 million. Last weekend I started comparing how this was doing to other Brad Pitt films that he was starring in, not necessarily producing. It just outgrossed The Big Short by $8 million, and it needs $7 million now to outgross Fury, so that's pretty good. Worldwide, though, it is sitting at $159 million. Now, as I've been talking about the budgets, $90 million needs to double that to at least, you know, have some kind of signs of a success, so it needs $21 million more dollars to get there, I'm hoping, because I believe IMDb listed that end of August, beginning of September, there's like a couple other countries that were going to be releasing it, and I was really hoping that that would boost it, and it would actually get to that point, maybe even get to $200 million worldwide. That'd be great. And also, of course, the drought of September here and word of mouth of people enjoying this movie could help as well. But you know, it's slowly getting there, and it might not be like when it did pretty well on its opening weekend, all things considered, with how other movies that aren't necessarily IP driven, I know this is based off a book, but not everyone knows that going into this movie, it did pretty well considering all that. But now as we're kind of getting to, you know, it's been out for like about a month now, and it's kind of like, I wish that, you know, the numbers were a tad better, especially with that budget, but still, it's doing all right as far as what I'm seeing here. It got $2 million over Happy Feet 2, which is what I mentioned last weekend. That's technically a Brad Pitt film worldwide, and it needs $1 million more to outgross Legends of the Fall. So there you go, outgrossing Brad Pitt films left and right. Way to go, Bullet Train. Let's move on to number 3, which is Beast, making $4.9 million, adding to a domestic total of $20 million. It's $11 million away from outgrossing Adrift, about Zark Cormicor's previous film. Worldwide, it is sitting at $36 million, which is the exact initial production budget. It still needs to double that to be considered a success, so it still needs to get to $72 million. I'm hoping with these next couple weeks, it'll still have a chance to get there. Obviously, it didn't open big last weekend, so the drop from that to this 4.9 is like, you know, not really, it's barely noticeable, you know what I mean? But still, it's not great, but, you know, with a budget, with this amount of budget, it could still have a chance, especially in the next coming weeks, and that's what I'm kind of praying for. It needs $21 million more to outgross Adrift 2 worldwide, so I'm really praying for it. It's kind of a bummer. That's why I titled the video, like, the month of Idris Elba ends poorly, because, I mean, Idris Elba's got 2 movies coming out, end of August, maybe should have been bigger hits than they were, maybe they should have been publicized and talked about a little bit more. Maybe I should make a video on that, you know, how Idris Elba was let down by, I guess, marketing and theater audiences or whatever. Because I feel like Beast got, decent enough reviews where people would be like, oh yeah, I'll go see Idris Elba fight a fucking lion, you know what I mean? But whatever. Moving on to number 4, which is Top Gun Maverick. No movie can be as successful as Top Gun Maverick, making $4.7 million, adding to a domestic total of $691 million, $9 million away from getting to $700 million domestically, which is quite incredible, to say the least. In fact, it needs $9 million more also to outgross Black Panther's overall domestic run and enter the top 5 highest grossing domestic runs of all time. And I'm thinking, it's whether it's next weekend, whether it's the week after that, it's gonna happen, and that would be pretty exciting to see. Worldwide, it's sitting at $1,404 million, which is $41 million away from Frozen 2's 11th spot. It still has a ways to go to get, anywhere near a top 5 for the worldwide charts, but that's a tougher thing to go against, so it's still just doing fucking incredible. Not even really worth dwelling on anymore. Let's just move on to number 5, which is Dragon Ball Super Superhero. I thought for sure maybe it would hold over well, considering it kind of surprised me and a couple other people last weekend, but I guess, on its opening weekend, that's where you get most of the anime Dragon Ball fans out first, and now it's like, okay, people who are maybe interested now, or maybe people who are late who didn't know it would be playing this long will go see it, but that's not as much as the initial weekend, but it did make $4.5 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $30 million. I'm still not sure what the budget of this movie was, but worldwide it is sitting at $56 million, so do with that as you will. I have nothing else to report on Dragon Ball Superhero, which is a pretty clunky title, I must say. Hey, you know what? Maybe it dropped from 20 million to 4 million because of all the fucking anime nerds I see on Twitter clips just screaming at the audience like, give me your strength! That seems cringe as hell, and I wouldn't be surprised if people were like, maybe it's not worth seeing these movies in the theater anymore. It certainly makes me just a tad worried because I've been trying to see more anime in the theaters. It makes me a tad worried now, like I really fucking hope that I don't get any of these fucking people. But moving on to number 6, which is DC League of Super Pets, making $4.2 million, adding to a domestic total of $74 million. It just outgrossed Wag's Storks by $2 million. It needs $9 million more to outgross Smallfoot. Similar to Top Gun, I give it next weekend or the week after, it'll probably do that for sure. Worldwide, it is still sitting at $138 million, though, which is $45 million away from Storks. So they outgross Storks domestically. Worldwide still has a ways to go. But it seems like worldwide, they really have not inched any way significantly, you know what I mean? It's just sitting here below its doubling point of 180 million. It needs 42 million to be considered an initial success, and it's still nowhere near that. Jesus Christ. And Warner Brothers is really betting their entire future on Dwayne Johnson's Black Adam. Are we sure about that, guys? Number 7, though, 3,000 Years of Longing. Like I said, Idris Elba's month just going to shit. This is the other movie that, for all intents and purposes, probably should have been marketed and talked about a lot more. This is George Miller's follow-up to Mad Max Fury Road. It's not like an action movie. It's a different kind of movie for him. It cost $60 million to make. It seems bonkers and crazy, wacky fantasy in the trailer, and those elements are certainly there, but it's also a pretty serious movie about certain emotions and grief and loss and love. It's actually quite fascinating. Unfortunately, it only made $2.8 million this weekend. I'm not sure when we're going to expect a worldwide total. Maybe George Miller will get some more attention in Australia, so maybe that'll pump into the worldwide total at least, but with a $60 million budget, that's that is a lot, to open this poorly. It's very unfortunate, and I feel like a lot of the marketing people or the theaters, whoever, have really done a disservice to this movie. I mean, imagine, you make Mad Max Fury Road, which is, it did pretty well at the box office, but it's also been hailed in recent years as one of the best action movies of all time, nominated for several Oscars, including Best Picture. Didn't win Best Picture, but still, it was that incredibly made. His follow-up is something different, something, refreshing after, Mad Max, and barely anyone is talking about it or seeing it. That is incredibly disappointing, to say the least, especially because it is a good movie. Anyways, number 8, though, Minions, The Rise of Gru, which is a bad movie, but continues to make money, making $2.74 million, adding to a domestic total of $354 million, so it's $14 million away from outgrossing Despicable Me 2 and The Secret Life of Pets. This one is still, I know I said for, League of Super Pets and Top Gun Maverick, it still had, maybe next week or the week after it'll outgross these things that I, mentioned, but for Minions, I think it's kind of slowed down down to a point where it's like, maybe it will, but it would probably be like outside of the top 10, I feel. I'm not sure how much longer this movie is going to be sticking around, but you know what? You know, it's incredible that it's even made this much money, you know? Worldwide, it's sitting at $868 million, which is $17 million from outgrossing The Secret Life of Pets. So there you go. I don't think I need to talk about Minions anymore. Let's talk about number 9, Thor: Love and Thunder, making $2.70 million, adding to a domestic total of $336 million. So it is outgrossed by $3 million Guardians of the Galaxy 1, and it is $2 million over Spider-Man: Homecoming. So it's outgrossed 2 MCU movies since last weekend's box office video. It now needs $53 million to outgross Guardians Volume 2, which it definitely will not do. I do love how, like, for these past couple weekends, I've been like, oh, it just needs to get over that hurdle of Guardians of the Galaxy, and now that it has, its next hurdle, which is impossible to get to at this point because its intake is slowed down dramatically, is the other Guardians of the Galaxy movie, which is kind of funny to me. And also worldwide, it is sitting at $746 million, where it is still behind the first Guardians by $24 million. So I don't think this is going to stick around. With that Spider-Man No Way Home re-release coming, I think that will be, you know, it will swap MCU movies. Thor: Love and Thunder will exit, Spider-Man will come back, you know? So I think that's the trade-off here. I think that's what's going to be happening. This will probably be the last time we see this movie. You know, definitely not the biggest success in the world, especially with that huge-ass $250 million budget. You know, this number is a little disappointing and maybe worrying, but you know, it still made its money. It still doubled its budget, and it is literally like $4 million away from tripling the budget. So it's probably fine, and these MCU movies are never going to stop making money, you know what I mean? So it's nothing is in jeopardy here. Maybe, you know, best case scenario, it'll make people, the creatives over at the MCU, maybe really reconsider this kind of model they've taken to making their movies of just rushing and rushing and rushing stuff. Because I feel like one of the biggest things that people have increasingly talked about with each MCU movie that comes and goes is some of the production aspects of it. You know, why are the visual effects this bad? Why aren't you appreciating your visual effects animators as much as you should? A lot of it has to do with their poor treatment of visual effects artists, is where that kind of goes to, and their lack of time for them to do stuff, and their over-reliance on computers instead of just, you know, crafting something on the day practically or whatever. Oy vey. Let's move on to number 10, closing this out with a positive. Where the Crawdads Sing, making $2.3 million, adding to a domestic total of $81 million, and worldwide, it is sitting at $101 million. They did it. They crossed over the $100 million mark worldwide. Congrats to Reese. Congrats to the Hello Sunshine team. Where the Crawdads Sing gets to leave the top 10 with some dignity. They had a better summer than Idris Elba, unfortunately. Now it's time for the fun part, the predictions for next week's top 5. As I mentioned earlier, Spider-Man No Way Home is having a re-release, and you know, sometimes re-releases don't have a big chance at the box office, sometimes they do, but in this case, you know, Spider-Man No Way Home is one of the biggest movies of all time, and it just came out last year, and they're also teasing the fact that there is new footage that you cannot find even on the Blu-ray. They maybe teased that the Blu-ray would have it, but then they stripped it, put it in this re-release in the hopes of making more money, and I think it will work. I think especially with how low Invitation's number 1 win was with $7 million, I think Spider-Man No Way Home will absolutely get number 1 again. Then number 2, I think, will be Honk for Jesus Save Your Soul, even though it is opening on Peacock the same day. It's really hard to see, like, you know, they are putting Jordan Peele and Daniel Kaluuya's name all over it. You know, the comedy could appeal to some people, and you know, with like I said, Invitation making $7 million, it's easy for any movie to kind of squeeze in there right now. Then I'm going to say number 3 is The Invitation, number 4, Bullet Train, and number 5, Beast. But what are your predictions for next week's top 5? Leave them in the comments below, and if you got your predictions right for this week, you're going to get a shout out right now. Unless you didn't get it right, then I'm sorry. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.